Well, welcome back to OpenLine, talking about refugee resettlement here in Tennessee. There was a major lawsuit that was dismissed that we discussed at the top of the show. That was dismissed just last month. There could be an appeal with that lawsuit. Have a panel up here. We streamed the first part of this live on our Facebook page, and a bunch of comments just in that first 10 minutes. And one of them was, if you are not legal, we don't want you here. That's Lori Hardison Gossett. And there are other comments to that effect about if you're not legal, don't come here, that kind of thing. And I'm going to take calls here in a moment, but to address that issue, concern, comment, what do you say?
Well, when we're talking about refugee resettlement, we're talking about people who are legal, to borrow that word. I mean, the federal government vets people and then gives them entry into the United States and then settles them in one of the 50 states, and so these folks are legal. Also, we're talking about folks that our immigration laws acknowledge that some people who are fleeing war and persecution are entitled to a hearing for, say, asylum. So that's another class of people we're talking about. So we're not talking about people who are undocumented. We're talking about documented immigrants who have come through this refugee program or through the asylum system and are being resettled because they can't exist, they can't live in their home countries.
Certainly that was your case. I mean, you had the paperwork and everything, and then all of a sudden, because of the executive order, you weren't allowed in.
Yes, and that was really one of the surprising parts about it. I've been, of course, hearing about this notion that, of course, I have all the legal paperwork, I have all the background checks, and the United States government knows who I am, so to speak, and therefore I shouldn't really be affected by this. But I think some of the laws that are being passed now affect all kinds of refugees, and even those who have worked with the U.S. government and have stood shoulder to shoulder with American servicemen and put their lives in danger with them to the mission of the American government and believed in that, but still those people have been turned away, and I was a part of that. Me and my family were a part of that as well.
And as we're talking about refugees, and this lawsuit was about refugees.
Yes.
Here we have a comment from Joey King. Let's take care of Tennesseans first. You talked about the numbers. Mm-hmm. They're small. Mm-hmm. And you have Binyad here, whose family had helped fight the Iraq War. I mean, so these are people who have been vetted. I guess there's some distrust about the vetting system, and some thought that, okay, they're taking money in social programs and take care of Tennesseans first. I mean, when you hear some of these comments, what do you say?
Yeah. Well, the goal of the Refugee Resettlement Program is actually self-sufficiency. And so refugees have to even pay back the full cost of their travel to the United States within 6 months of arriving here. So imagine if you're a refugee who doesn't speak English and is going through culture shock. Not only have you fled persecution or war, but now you have to find a job for yourself to sustain your family in 6 months and pay back thousands of dollars in your travel costs. And then you have to, immediately start becoming self-sufficient. And so the program really promotes that, and refugees they are survivalists. They have to start over their lives, and they're here because they want the best for their families. They want the opportunities that America has to offer, and to live without fear of their safety. And so, I think we need to recognize that they're not taking our benefits. They're taxpayers, they're working. And in fact, even the Tennessee General Assembly's own Fiscal Review Committee found that refugees contribute much more than they cost. I think it was over $1 billion is what refugees contribute in terms of the taxes that they pay. Versus,
I didn't know that they had to repay.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Did you have to do that?
Yes. All travel expenses we had to repay and take care of.
Mm-hmm.
And how hard was that?
It was a pretty big strain. We had to, of course, we can pay it in installments, and we have to work real hard to pay that back.
And think about, for Binyad, they had to pay that cost twice because they were on their way there, mm-hmm. turned back, and then they had to pay again to come back.
Wow. And the other issue that I'm seeing, the notion of extreme vetting, are we vetting people properly? I think the other thing people are concerned about is terrorism. Are we letting people in who could do us harm? And so we see that on some of the Facebook comments. How do we deal with that? What do you say to people who are saying that and have that as a concern?
Yeah.
I think, well,
go ahead.
First of all, I mean, there is vetting. So I think let's dispel anybody that might have a notion that there's no vetting going on. Extreme vetting is kind of a term that's been used by the president and by others. And I think really for a notion for, well, maybe the vetting needs to be more thorough. And while certainly there's room for discussion about what the vetting is and if it can be improved, I think we should need to acknowledge that it is already very thorough. You know, this is not a you fill out a form and you get into the country. I mean, it can take years for certain refugees to go through this process. So the vetting, in my opinion, is already extreme. You know, whether it can be improved, that's certainly a topic for discussion. But should we shut down and not help these people who are in need because we want to have a conversation about how to maybe add vetting procedures here, take them away there? You know, that's where I think there's a disconnect, and that's where I would say no, we shouldn't. You know, this program has been working for a long time, for decades, and successfully resettled people in our country who are contributing to our country and are Tennesseans and Americans. And so, you know, we should always worry about our country's safety, but not at the expense of our humanity.
And Mike Feltz here on Facebook says there's a difference between refugees and those who are undocumented, essentially is what he's saying. There's a difference between refugees and those who are undocumented. Do the two get confused, and is that a concern, or what about what Mike Feltz is saying?
Well, refugees certainly, like Tom said earlier, they go through a process of vetting. The federal government knows who they are. They have work permits, social security numbers. They are, you know, authorized to be here. But I think in terms of the discussion about undocumented immigrants, what we also need to realize is that our immigration system is outdated and broken. And so our laws haven't been updated in decades. And so there are people who are here who are undocumented, who deserve asylum, but they haven't been able to get that asylum or to get that on a pathway to citizenship because our laws are not keeping up with the modern age, with the demand for jobs here in the United States. And so yes, they do get conflated, but I think they're all part of the same effort to erode support for people who are really trying to live the American dream and give back to this country.
All right, let's go to Ellen here on the phone. You've waited a while. Ellen, thank you for waiting. What's on your mind?
Well, I don't understand why they can't go back like they used to. When they come over here, if they want to be live in the United States and be an American, why don't they go through and become a citizen? Because I know they can do this, and this is what they used to have to do. And that's what I don't understand, is they want to come over here but still not become a citizen. That's what I don't understand.
Okay. Binyad, what's your situation, and I guess address what Ellen's saying there?
Well, my status is a permanent resident right now, and in 4 years or 5 years I will be applying to get my citizenship. Once you're coming into the United States and you have a green card, you need to live here to become an American. Essentially, you need 5 years to learn the language, the culture, everything, and then you're essentially going to apply to become a citizen, and that's what many people do. But and I have the privilege to be on that track, to have the proper legal pathway to become a citizen, which many others don't have.
So your goal is, of course, to become a citizen.
Yes.
The only reason you're waiting 4 years or 5 years is because that's how long you have to wait.
Exactly.
You want to become a citizen.
Yeah, there's a requirement.
And so, again, I think people, there's not the information out there, right? People just don't understand, in a lot of cases, what's going on. There's all kinds of information coming at people from all kinds of different directions. Ellen, you know, brings up a point I think a lot of people have, but, you know, so when you hear what she says, what do you say?
Yeah, well, refugees are on a pathway to citizenship. Like Binyad said, you have refugee status for a year, you become a green card holder, and then you have to wait 4 or 5 years before you can apply for citizenship. And when you apply for citizenship, you have to take a test about U.S. government and history and civics, probably a test that most Americans could not pass. You have to go before a judge and swear your allegiance to the flag and to the U.S. government. And you again have to go through all kinds of background checks and things like that. And the vast majority of refugees do become citizens. They are voters in our elections. They are Tennesseans.
And that's where some of this misinformation is concerning. There's just lots of people that are uncomfortable. You know, they're either scared about terrorism or they're scared about their jobs, and so things get all pushed together into one big sort of issue when it's a much more nuanced thing. There are a lot of different things going on. Again, there's a difference between an undocumented person and a refugee, and that is even being lost. And so we're seeing that in some of the comments and also some of the calls. All right, we're going to take a break. We will come back, take more calls. There's the number 615-737+, 615-737-7587. Take a break, be back right after this.